All right, Adam. Well, it's Monday, and we've had a couple days to kind of digest this win, and had a chance to talk to Coach Durrell again today and get his thoughts on, after going back and watching the tape, which is what coaches like to do. What were your thoughts, first off, from Coach Durrell when he talked today?
Yeah, and I do. I know we both do the same thing. We watch the game from the press box, and that vantage point gives you stuff that you can't see on TV. But there's a lot of stuff on TV when you rewatch the game that you see as well. So jotted down a bunch of notes. Carl Durrell obviously said that he felt good about them offensively. Was asked about the offensive line, said they did a really good job. Uh, but it was pretty clear rewatching the game. Yeah, offensively they still have areas they can get better at.
Right.
Defensively, of course, he talked about early in the second half when they gave up 21 points and 3 UCLA possessions, but was proud of the guys for their resiliency. I think we've seen this team give up really big leads. And it's tough to come back from that mentally for these 18, 22-year-olds. So the resiliency they showed in that second half, I thought was as encouraging as anything we saw out of the team on Saturday.
Yeah, and it looked dangerous for a while because UCLA made up 21 of those points very quickly on that 28-point lead. But yeah, they did a good job of staying resilient, like you said, like Coach Durrell said, extending the lead, maybe not as much as they wanted, but getting a couple of Evan Price field goals to at least extend that lead a little bit. So I guess let's start offensively, Adam, and go through that because there's 48 points. It's hard to really nitpick that. I mean, I was looking back. This was their 83rd game against Pac-12 competition since joining the conference. They've only scored more than 48 points twice, and one of those was that double overtime game against Cal. So the most they've ever scored in regulation in a Pac-12 game is 49. So they were right there. So it's hard to nitpick too much, but certainly they left points on the table, didn't they?
Yeah, well, just overall offensively, rewatching the game, I was even more impressed with Darren Cheverini's play calling. Just such a great blend of play calls, and like we talked about with Carl Durrell. Now, the big challenge for him is to not ever become predictable because that was the issue late in the 2018 season. So really anxious to see if they can keep throwing wrinkles in there week to week because that was fun. That was a fun unit to watch, and Sam Neuer really, in most cases, took what the defense gave him, and then you start to you rewatch the game and you cringe at some of his decision making as a runner. As Carl Drill was asked, it is inspiring for the team, but
Yeah.
you know, getting one extra yard here and there versus one of those plays he threw his throwing shoulder into the defender. Another play he's trying to hurdle guys downfield. The the benefit is not going to outweigh the risk there. So obviously that's something that I'm sure Danny Langsdorf and Carl Durrell are going to be hammering home with him. But you just love kind of his moxie out there. He's always had a great personality, and I think he's a guy that people can really rally behind. I've seen some comparisons because of the physical runs he had on Saturday to Cepho, but he really reminds me with his athleticism more of Tyler Hansen. I see a lot of Tyler Hansen in him.
Yeah, and I will say this, and I agree with Darrell, and I agree with you that you can't probably be running like that all the time. But I thought that was kind of important for Sam to run like that first game, and show his teammates. I think they know him as a competitor, they know him as a leader, but you can't get hit in practice. I thought that was kind of a big deal for him, probably in the locker room, to play like that first game and just prove, hey, that's how I play. I put my body on the line. And now later in the season, maybe not so much, but he's shown that he can do it, right? But I agree with you. I think there was maybe a mix of Cepho, a mix of Tyler Hansen. Cepho didn't survive that season. I mean, he got through it, but not fully, right? And so this is a shorter season, but I think you'd rather not have Sam get hurt and have to come out a little bit because he's running like that. So I imagine we're going to see him slide a little bit, but it was fun to watch.
There was one play in the first half where Jarek Broussard clearly was supposed to come to the right side of Sam Noyer to take the handoff, and Sam stands there. There's no one there, and just quickly, I think it was about an 8-yard gain. I think that showed like what the difference is between Sam Noyer and Tyler Lytle right now, just because there's not a lot of CU quarterbacks recently that would have made a good gain out of that play that was botched.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was well. First off, I will say I thought he stood there longer than I thought he should have,
Yeah, I
and
know.
waited like, hey Sam, there's nobody coming. Take care of this ball here. But to make something out of it, he did a great job. His athleticism is clearly something that I think Tyler Lytle can run, but I think Sam is a better athlete, and I think that's clearly something that has put him over the top. And um, he proved it. I mean, it's one game. I've had a lot of people say, what's wrong with Tucker? He's clearly even better than Montez. It's like Montez had games that were better than this, and this is one game for Sam, and it's against a team that is not very good defensively, and so he's going to have tougher games. But for a first game, it's hard to complain about Sam Neuer.
Yeah, it is a good point you just made there. UCLA's defense is not very good, and so
Right.
we'll see as the challenges get greater. But again, like we talked on Saturday, you're going to expect the defense is going to get better as the season goes along. So I think it's going to kind of regress to the means a little bit.
Yeah, and I think going into this game, you and I both thought, well, the defense is ahead of the offense, and so the defense is going to have to carry this thing. Well, it was total opposite because I never thought the defense was going to give up 40 some points, and if they did, I would have said the Buffs were going to get blown out. And so, who knows with this game, right? I think it totally went against what most people thought was going to happen, but you would hope that defense gets better, and if they do, you kind of like to use chances in a lot of these games.
Yeah, without question. They just weren't good in coverage in a lot of spots on the defense on Saturday, and so that's got to get quite a bit better. They're going to. I mean, we should have expected some of that out of the secondary. Again, a lot of these guys don't have a ton of experience, and Christian Gonzalez is going to have to go through those growing pains.
Yeah, for sure. And he was one that clearly got picked on, had a couple of pass interference penalties, and whether they're legit or not, he got flagged for them. And then Dorian Thompson Robinson would come right back at him the next play. And I don't remember Gonzalez giving up massive plays, but he clearly looked like a freshman out there. I saw the athleticism, and he'll get better. I like what I saw overall from a guy playing his first game. I think he's going to be a good player. It's just he looked like a freshman playing his first game, right?
Yeah, I would like to get Tyson Summers' honest thoughts on what happened early in the second half because just what I saw, and I don't have access to the all 22s, and can't break it down like a coach can, but it seemed like UCLA kind of used CU's aggressiveness defensively against them early in the second half, and they had made some really good adjustments as an offensive staff. UCLA did to really come out, and I thought there was guys that were over pursuing a little bit, and UCLA saw that in the first half, and they took advantage of it in that second half.
Yeah, they did, especially on that run by DTR, the touchdown, and they really took advantage of some blown assignments in the middle of the field with the tight ends and with the screen passes as well. The screen passes are a clear way to combat somebody's aggressiveness on defense, right? And they really burned the Buffs on those screen passes. So those are things I imagine that Tyson Summers is going to start working on this week.
Yeah, I had a couple other notes here, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Yeah, obviously, Jaron Mangum didn't have what did he have? He had 6 yards on 9 rushing attempts. But I'm seeing some CU fans are really ready to give up on him already. A couple of those runs, I mean, the defender was in his face the second he got the ball. He didn't really have much of a chance there. And Jarek Broussard carrying it 31 times. I don't know if you want to do that every week. I think people are too down on Jaron Mangum off a really small sample size early on this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's one, and I don't remember which point of the game it was, but I remember rewatching it on the broadcast where, he takes the handoff, and you're right, he's tackled immediately, and it was clear somebody blew an assignment because things were wide open on the left. I think Mangum would have gone a long way had that guy been blocked. So, I thought that Mangum was sort of a victim of bad luck because it seemed like half of his carries, they just weren't blocked very well, and he was hit right away.
Yeah.
So, there was only a couple times that he was able to get past the line of scrimmage and make a run out of it. So he's going to be better than that. I mean, that's not who Jaron Mangum is. I think that once he gets going this season, he's going to have some games where he carries 12 to 15 times a game, and he's going to have 75, 80 yards, and fans are going to like what he did. So I wouldn't judge him based off that game at all.
I thought William Sherman was an absolute, played like an All-American in that first game. We've talked about him potentially being, an all-conference guy, and he really showed that in the first game. We didn't mention Maurice Bell on our post-game analysis video, and he had a couple kickoff returns that he almost broke. I think he showed exactly why he won that job, and I wouldn't be surprised if he breaks one of those this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I thought he had a really good game as a receiver and then also as a returner. I mean, you could question some of those decisions to bring it out. Probably question more Jarek Broussard's decision on the opening kickoff, but I think that's a guy trying to make a play. I like Maurice Bell. I think that he's been a guy that's been waiting and waiting for his turn. I thought he made the most of it the other night.
Yeah, and we were talking about before we started this is we're trying to get a feel for Carl Durrell and how aggressive he is. It was interesting their first fourth down on offense, they go for it, they convert it, and then the rest of the game they were ultra conservative, especially there at the end of the first half. And I know UCLA's writers had categorized him as being very conservative, and yeah, I think that's something that fans are going to get frustrated with if that continues.
Well, certainly if it continues and they're losing games, right? If it costs them points
Right.
and ultimately games, again, it's another one of those things you can nitpick now and say, well, at least we won the game. But I thought the end of the first half was like some of the end of the game stuff. I understand it, but the end of the first half, I thought was the more egregious one for Durrell. Was I think it's a minute 44. They get to the UCLA 38-yard line, all three timeouts. They don't use any of them, and they let a whole minute milk off the clock in between a couple different plays and settle for a 51-yard field goal. And I thought, keep your foot on the gas. I mean, the way your offense is playing, they have 35 points at that point. I would have put the foot on the gas and, if nothing else, you make it a chip shot field goal for James Stefano instead of the 51-yarder that he
Yeah.
can hit, but that's still a tougher. That's a tougher kick. I thought they took the foot off the gas and probably cost themselves 3 points there.
Yeah. And also, Carl Durrell has an even keel demeanor. We know that. But there was late in the game, Sam Neuer called a timeout when Carl Durrell didn't want him to, and he showed some fire there. So he's going to get in there and be aggressive when he needs to at times, and not going to be a pushover by any stretch.
Yeah, I think that kind of shows right there that the player's going to know when Durrell's in charge, right? They know he's in charge, and that's kind of one of those moments that maybe Durrell asserts himself there. But I'll be honest with you, rewatching the broadcast, we don't notice this. I don't know about you. I don't notice him that much when we're up in the press box. It's more focused on the game. But watching the
Yeah.
broadcast where you can really see it, I was really impressed with the demeanor. I don't remember the last time we've seen a coach that calm, and I thought Tucker was stayed within himself, but certainly emotional. Mike McIntyre's totally different story. There was some fly off the handle moments, and
Yes.
maybe Durrell will have some of those, but I doubt it. I mean, just watching the other day, I mean, even when they scored, I mean, it was just the same face the whole time. Now it's mask covered, I get it, but we're judging by the eyes. But I thought that his demeanor was impressive, and he said, you asked him the question last week. I think it was you that asked him, what are you going to be like on game day? And he said, I'll be calm and ready to go, and he was.
Yeah. The other thing I think we need to talk about, Brian, is the Tyler Lytle situation. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. Obviously, they drew criticism for the timing of when Tyler Lytle was inserted into the game. Carl Durrell told us today they're going to continue to play Tyler Lytle. And I'm kind of torn here, Brian, because I totally get you want to get Tyler Lytle out there. But what was the biggest issue with Sam Neuer before Saturday is that he had never started a game, right?
Yeah.
If you're inserted into the middle of a game, it's tough to play well. Steven Montez was inserted in against Michigan and struggled. Sam Neuer's been inserted into games and struggled. He gets his first start and he plays really, really well. I don't know if it's fair to Tyler Lytle to be thrown out there in certain circumstances. I understand you want to get game reps under his belt, but it's going to be really tough for him to play well in that role, I feel like.
Yeah, although I will say this, I think that in the past, all of Lytle's experience is being thrown in there in bad situations, right? Late game, he threw 5 passes against Utah in the snow a couple years ago in the game that ultimately was the one that got Mike McIntyre fired. And that was 5 of his 6 career passes. The other one was the one where he comes in last year. I think it was against Washington State, gets drilled and is done. So, he's been in bad situations. This was giving him an opportunity in a situation where it matters and things are going well. And I will say this, and it's something that I hadn't really thought of until today, Adam, and I haven't seen mentioned by the fans, is that in a year like this, I think it's valuable to give Tyler Lytle reps like that because of COVID. And Coach Durrell said today, I want to continue to give reps like that to Tyler. And you look around the conference or around the country. Last week, Stanford played without its starting quarterback and had to go with the backup. We've seen other teams have to go with their backup. And if Tyler doesn't have any of those reps whatsoever, and we're 3 weeks into the season and Sam Neuer tests positive for COVID or has to sit out, then what do you do? Tyler doesn't have any of those reps. So I see value in a year like this of giving him those types of reps.
I guess, yeah, I don't disagree with you. I'm kind of conflicted here. Again, I think
Me
we
too.
want to get
Yeah.
Tyler Lytle out there, but when is a good time though? Because if Sam Noir's hot like he was when they took him out for a series, that's not good. But if they're really struggling, like you said, that's not an ideal situation either. I just think it's really tough to find a good timing to put him in the game.
I totally agree with you, and I'm conflicted as well. And I think, um, it slowed the momentum for that one drive, but they were able to pick it back up. So I think that had you made that change, and then Neuer comes back, and the offense doesn't look the same, then he really would have been questioned at that point. I think that I wouldn't say they got lucky, but they were fortunate that Neuer kind of picked things back up, and they were still able to go on and score a bunch of points. I think it was 21-7 at that point when they put
Yeah.
Lytle in.
Hmm.
So, you know, if things would have slowed down, I think you question it more. But I was surprised they put him in at that point because I knew I had been told that he was going to play in the second quarter. But I thought if Neuer's playing that well, you don't take him out. And so I was a little surprised by it. But I see both sides to it.
And this is probably why coaches should avoid media and fans, right? Because
Right.
we're going to nitpick everything. They just won their football game, their first game this year. So
Yeah.
but it's part of our job, I guess, to do that.
Yeah. And they're nitpicking as well, right? I mean, there's a lot to
Right,
correct in
right.
them, and it's decisions like that though that we nitpick that a lot of times coaches at least publicly say they don't question themselves. They've got certain ways they want to do things, and um, it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's going to be more adversity coming, and I think you and I both agree that they're going to play tougher teams. Probably most of their schedule is going to be tougher than what they saw on Saturday night, and they're going to hit adverse situations. So it's just interesting to see Durrell that first game, how he's going to handle certain things. And I think I know fans want him to be a little more aggressive in some of those situations, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, to your point, Arizona's probably the only other team that could be as bad as UCLA is probably going to be this year. So they're going to
Yeah,
have to play better if they want to keep winning.
yeah, I agree with you, and we'll see. Certainly, this year's different. If Utah can't get a handle on things, maybe Utah gets ravaged by some people being out, and
Well, they
who
lost a
knows?
ton to the NFL. I
They
know
did.
Kyle Whittingham does a great job of retooling, but I can't imagine that defense is going to be anywhere near as salty as they were last year.
Right, but I mean, with COVID, I don't know if you saw this
Yeah,
morning, but they were saying that there's practice squad guys that were running first team reps because so many guys are out right now. So you would hope that Utah gets that under wraps soon. But um, what I guess my point is, who knows who's going to be available week in and week out, right? But I guess
right.
on paper, Arizona is probably the only team I would look at and say would be worse than what we saw with UCLA.
Yeah. And we'll see there. They didn't have a ton of injuries, but some really important players got banged up. Colby Purcell
Mhm.
and Chris Miller. It sounds like they're doubtful right now. And gosh, you just feel so bad for Chris Miller. He can't catch a break.
Right, and I couldn't see on the broadcast what happened. Did you? It looked like it was non-contact, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. At least it doesn't sound like either of those two guys are going to be out for a really long period of time.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. I could tell on the broadcast when Purcell got hurt. It was right before Neuer's touchdown run in the third when they were down the goal line. The play before that, you see Purcell get up limping. He was able to stay on the field because they went quickly for Neuer for the sneak, but then he didn't play again. So something happened there, a leg injury of some sort. But you hope that he gets back and that Miller can get back. Because I agree. I feel bad for Chris Miller. You want that kid to play the full season if you can, or most of it.
We've probably rambled on long enough at this point, right?
Yeah, probably. Let's. We'll be back later on this week to do more analysis and preview the game. What we hope is going to be a game this week at
Yes.
Stanford.